So there was this interesting piece in The Economist not too long ago, and it kind of poked fun at India's like fixation on these unique identification numbers. It was, a bit tongue-in-cheek.
Right.
But it really highlighted something important, and you dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to be looking at today.
Okay.
It's all about the difference between just having an ID and having an ID that is truly unique.
Right.
And, that difference actually matters quite a bit, especially when we think about something as fundamental as democracy and elections.
Absolutely. It's not just semantics, right? It's about making sure that our elections are fair and accurate. And for you, our listeners, especially if you're preparing for the UPSC exams,
Right.
understanding this nuance is so important.
Yeah.
Because it really touches upon governance, electoral integrity,
Yeah.
fundamental rights, all things that are super relevant to your syllabus.
Exactly. So today we're going to be diving deep into this whole area. And specifically, we're going to focus on the Election Commission of India's, their efforts to link voter IDs with Aadhaar. We'll try to understand why they're doing this, what they're hoping to achieve.
Right.
But also we'll look at some of the potential challenges and risks.
Yeah, those are important.
To really get into the nitty-gritty, we're going to be looking closely at this article from The Hindu published on March 20th, 2025.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly does the article say about the difference between a simple ID and a unique ID?
All right, so the article makes a very clear distinction.
Okay.
Think about your voter ID card, the EPP card,
Right.
or your driver's license.
Yeah.
These IDs, they serve a specific purpose, right?
Right.
So your voter ID confirms you can vote in elections.
Yes.
It's tied to that specific function. Your driver's license allows you to drive.
Exactly.
So these are functional IDs linked to particular activities.
Now, a unique ID, on the other hand, is supposed to be intrinsically tied to you as an individual.
Right.
So the idea is that it identifies you definitively, separates you from every other person in every context.
Got it.
The best example we have is Aadhaar, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It uses your biometric data to try to uniquely identify you
Yeah.
across a whole range of situations, not just for one specific purpose.
And it's interesting because the push for this unique identification in India has a history,
Yes.
right? It goes
Yeah.
back to the challenges of delivering welfare services and accurately identifying beneficiaries.
Yes.
Before Aadhaar, there wasn't really a reliable system for that. Now, here's where things get interesting, and the Hindu article really points this out.
Okay.
They suggest that the Election Commission of India for a long time seems to have either misunderstood or maybe even misrepresented
Right.
this fundamental difference between these two types of IDs.
Interesting. So what were they saying?
Well, going as far back as 2008,
Okay.
the ECI was claiming that every single voter ID was already unique. They were basically operating under the assumption that their existing system
Right.
guaranteed that each voter had a unique ID.
So they believed that the system inherently prevented any duplication.
Yeah, that seems to be what they were saying, but the article really challenges that claim.
Okay.
And they present some pretty convincing evidence to back it up.
And what evidence is that?
The article highlights the Maharashtra Assembly elections back in November 2024 as a turning point.
Oh, yes. That election brought up some major issues, didn't it?
It did. The number of new voter registrations in a very short period of time was huge.
Yeah, 40 lakh new voters in just 5 months.
That's right.
It's incredible when you compare that to the 5 years before that.
Exactly.
Only 32 lakhs new voters registered in those 5 years.
Right. So this massive spike in new registrations raised some serious red flags.
Yeah, it definitely indicated that something wasn't right.
Exactly. And when they investigated, they found some really concerning problems.
Like what specifically?
Well, they discovered that some people had managed to register to vote in multiple constituencies.
Oh, wow.
Some even across state lines.
And that's not all, is it?
No, in some cases, the same voter ID number had been assigned to different people.
Wow, that's a serious flaw in the system.
So if we connect this back to electoral integrity,
Right.
the article's conclusion is pretty clear.
Okay.
The current voter ID system doesn't actually guarantee that each ID is unique. Or even more importantly, that each voter is unique.
Right, which of course raises serious doubts about the accuracy of the voter rolls.
Exactly. So we've established that the existing system has some pretty significant problems.
Yes, definitely.
Now let's talk about the solution that's being proposed,
Okay.
which is linking voter IDs with Aadhaar.
Right.
What's the thinking behind this move?
Well, according to the article, the main goal is to tackle the problem of duplicate voter registrations.
Okay.
The idea is that since Aadhaar is a unique ID based on biometrics, it could help accurately identify and remove duplicate entries from the voter rolls.
It makes sense on the surface, right?
Yeah, it does at first glance.
You have Aadhaar, which is designed to uniquely identify people using their biometrics like fingerprints and iris scans.
Right.
So linking that to voter IDs seems like a logical way to clean up the voter lists and prevent people from voting multiple times.
It does seem that way, but the article goes on to explore some important limitations and potential risks with this approach.
Okay, so what are some of those concerns?
Well, the first issue they raise is the challenge of partial implementation.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
The article argues that unless almost everyone links their Aadhaar to their voter ID,
Yeah,
it won't really be effective in eliminating duplicates.
I see.
Because think about it, if only a portion of voters link their Aadhaar,
Right.
people who want to commit fraud could still exploit those unlinked voter IDs.
So it creates a loophole.
Exactly. And the article makes a strong case that partial linkage might even create a false sense of security without actually solving the underlying problems.
And it raises an interesting question.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even partial linkage deter at least some fraudulent activity?
That's a good point, but the Hindu's argument seems to be that it's not enough.
Right.
It wouldn't be a comprehensive solution.
Okay, then the article brings up what they call the legal paradox.
Ah, yes. This is a really crucial point.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. So this is where we see a conflict between the technical solution being proposed
Right.
and the legal framework surrounding Aadhaar and the right to vote.
Okay.
The Supreme Court has ruled, and the Aadhaar Act itself states that Aadhaar is voluntary for most services,
Right.
and that includes voting.
So you can't be forced to have Aadhaar to vote.
Exactly. The Constitution guarantees the right to vote. It can't be made dependent on having an Aadhaar number.
So we have this tension on one hand to really get rid of duplicate voter registrations.
Yes.
You might need almost everyone to link their Aadhaar. But on the other hand, the law says you can't make Aadhaar a requirement for voting.
Exactly. It's a tricky
A
situation.
real catch-22.
Indeed. And this legal complexity leads to other concerns that the article raises.
Like what?
Well, data privacy, for one.
Right, that's a big one these days.
Absolutely. And the potential for exclusion.
Okay, let's talk about data privacy first. What are the concerns if voter IDs are linked with Aadhaar?
Well, think about it linking the biometric data in Aadhaar
Yeah.
with voter databases. It creates this massive central repository of personal information.
Right.
And the article rightfully points out the risks,
Yeah.
like the potential for misuse for surveillance and the increased risk of data breaches.
And we're still figuring out data protection laws in India.
That's right. So these are definitely legitimate concerns.
Definitely. And then there's the risk of disenfranchisement.
Yes, particularly for marginalized groups.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. So the article highlights that certain groups, often the most vulnerable, may not have Aadhaar or might face difficulties in correcting errors in their Aadhaar records.
I see.
If voting even indirectly becomes dependent on Aadhaar,
Right.
it could end up excluding these eligible voters.
And that would undermine the whole principle of inclusivity in a democracy.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the Hindu also brings up the issue of accountability gaps.
Right. What does that refer to in this context?
It's about who's responsible if there are errors during the linking process.
Okay.
Imagine a legitimate voter's name is removed from the voter rolls
Yeah.
because of a mismatch between their Aadhaar and voter ID data. What recourse do they have?
Right.
The article points out that there isn't a clear system of accountability or transparent mechanisms to fix these errors.
So it becomes a bureaucratic nightmare?
It could, and that can erode public trust in the electoral process.
Yeah, because you don't want eligible citizens being denied their right to vote
Yes.
just because of some technical glitch or bureaucratic error.
And the article actually draws a parallel to what happened with linking Aadhaar to welfare services.
Right.
We saw cases where people were denied benefits because of these kinds of issues.
So it's a cautionary tale.
Definitely one we should pay attention to.
So given all these limitations and risks,
Yes.
what does the article suggest as a way forward?
Well, they emphasize the need for a strong assurance from the Election Commission of India.
Okay.
And they specifically say under oath that no eligible citizen will be denied their right to vote because of problems with Aadhaar linkage.
So basically a guarantee that linking Aadhaar won't disenfranchise anyone.
Exactly. That's the
Okay.
key safeguard they're asking for.
And it makes sense, right? You need that assurance to protect people's right to vote.
Absolutely. Without that guarantee.
Yeah.
This whole move towards using biometrics for voter identification could become exclusionary
Right.
and undermine the very foundation of a democratic system.
The Hindu also draws an interesting comparison with the indelible ink used during elections,
Oh, yes, I remember reading that.
which has become less reliable over time,
Right.
highlighting the need for constant vigilance and updates to protect citizens' rights.
It's an important reminder that safeguards need to be constantly reviewed and strengthened.
So if we put all this together,
Yeah.
the main takeaway from the article seems to be this tension between wanting to ensure electoral integrity.
Right, preventing fraud and duplication.
Exactly.
It's a worthy goal.
It is. But the question is how to achieve that through Aadhaar linkage
Right.
without compromising fundamental rights and making sure everyone who's eligible can still vote.
It's a complex challenge.
It is. It's not simply about having IDs. It's about using the right kind of ID
Yes.
in the right way for something as important as voting.
And the Hindu makes a compelling argument that linking voter ID with a voluntary unique ID like Aadhaar,
Right.
it raises a whole host of challenges and potential trade-offs that we need to consider very carefully.
And for you, our listener, especially if you're preparing for the UPSC exams.
Yes.
This deep dive into the Hindu article has touched upon so many crucial aspects of Indian governance,
Absolutely.
electoral processes, and the balance between national security efficiency and individual rights.
All key areas for both the prelims and the mains exam.
Exactly. It really makes you think about the broader implications of digital identity systems.
It does.
In a democracy, what safeguards do we need to prevent exclusion and maintain trust?
Right. What does a truly robust and inclusive electoral system look like in this digital age?
It's a question worth pondering.
Definitely a topic that deserves further exploration.
And if you found this analysis helpful for your UPSC preparation, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into important issues.
Yes, and feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions or any specific aspects you'd like us to explore in the future.
And just a reminder, the content for this deep dive came from the Hindu newspaper dated March 20th, 2025.
An insightful piece for sure.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time.
Bye.